There was a vault beneath the palace that no one spoke about in polite company. And inside that vault, a decision had already been made, one that would define two women's legacies, expose one woman's deepest insecurities, and quietly crown another years before any official ceremony ever took place. The decision was never announced. Never written down. Never explained. It was simply executed, one velvet box at a time, over 17 years of silence that was louder than any public declaration the Queen could have made. But to understand what Queen Elizabeth truly decided, and why she decided it, you have to understand what royal jewels actually are. Because they are not accessories. They are not decorations. They are not something a woman reaches for because it completes an outfit. Every single piece in that vault carries the compressed weight of history, grief, love, war, and dynasty. And the Queen who spent 70 years building that collection understood its architecture better than anyone alive. She knew exactly what each piece meant. She knew exactly what it said about the woman wearing it. And she knew exactly what it would say to the world when she made her choices. So when she started making them, quietly, methodically, without a single word of explanation, those choices were not casual. They were the most deliberate statements of her entire reign. Camilla Parker Bowles entered the royal family in April 2005 as Charles's wife. And within weeks of that wedding, she made a move that set something cold and permanent behind the Queen's eyes. Her team, and multiple palace sources confirmed this, began circling the royal vault. Senior staff reported requests, admiring comments made within earshot of the right people, quiet suggestions passed through the appropriate channels. Camilla wanted access. She wanted visibility. She wanted the jewels that would signal to the world that she had truly arrived, that she belonged, that the chapter was closed and the crown had moved on. The Queen did not say no. She was far too precise for something as blunt and confrontable as no. Instead, she opened the vault selectively and pointed Camilla toward pieces from the Queen Mother's collection. Grand, sweeping, undeniably beautiful, and completely frozen in time. Heavy Edwardian chokers. Multi-strand pearl necklaces with diamond clasps the size of thumbnails. Imposing pieces that photographed magnificently and communicated absolutely nothing about the future. The Queen was not being cruel. She was being architectural. She was dressing Camilla in history and keeping the living, breathing future of the monarchy locked behind a door Camilla could not see and had never been given a key to. What Camilla did not know, what nobody outside the Queen's most intimate circle knew, was that several specific pieces had already been quietly designated. Not in writing. Not in any formal decree. But understood with the absolute clarity that only comes from decades of proximity to a woman who said everything through action and almost nothing through words. These pieces were Catherine's. They had been Catherine since the Queen watched her daughter-in-law walk into Westminster Abbey in 2011 and recognized something she had been patiently waiting to find. The first piece was the Nizam of Hyderabad necklace. And this is where you need to stop and feel the full significance of what the Queen did, because this was not simply a loan. This was a declaration. The necklace, a Cartier masterpiece of geometric diamonds so precisely arranged it looks less like jewelry and more like architecture commissioned by God, was given to the Queen as a wedding gift in 1947 by the ruler of Hyderabad. She wore it in her early defining portraits. The images that ended up on currency, on stamps, in history books across the Commonwealth. That necklace is the visual face of the Elizabethan era itself. It is the image etched into the collective memory of an entire civilization when they close their eyes and picture a young, radiant, powerful queen at the beginning of everything. Camilla never touched it. In 2014, it went to Catherine for an official gala. And in that single evening, the Queen transferred the defining visual symbol of her own reign directly onto her daughter-in-law's shoulders and entirely away from the woman Charles had married. This was not subtle. It was not accidental. It was the most significant single act of endorsement the Queen was capable of making without issuing a formal proclamation. But the necklace was only the beginning. Because the grand pieces, the historic ones, the diplomatically significant ones, those Camilla could at least understand. Those she could track and process and make sense of, even if the answer was always the same. The ones that truly destroyed her were the quiet ones. The Cambridge Pearl Brooch. This is where the story shifts from political to personal and never comes back. The Queen wore this brooch for 7 decades. Not to state banquets. Not to televised events where the cameras would sweep across it for the world to analyze. She wore it to Christmas broadcasts. To quiet morning engagements. To the private portrait sittings that marked the decades of her reign like milestones on a road only she could see. It was less a piece of jewelry and more a companion. A small, constant, intimate piece of herself she carried everywhere. Camilla admired it. Openly. At a private family gathering, within earshot of staff who reported every word, she asked quietly whether she might wear it to an upcoming engagement. The Queen smiled. Said absolutely nothing. And the following year, without explanation, without acknowledgement, without a single word addressed to Camilla's request, the brooch appeared on Catherine's chest in the first official joint portrait she and William released in 2022. The most widely photographed, most widely distributed image of the next generation of the monarchy, and there was the Cambridge pearl brooch, front and center, carried into the visual record of a future that would outlast every living person in that photograph by a century. Camilla's request was not denied. It was simply erased. Answered in platinum and diamonds in a photograph that would hang on palace walls for the next 100 years, while her question was allowed to dissolve as though it had never been asked at all. Then came Queen Alexandra's wedding necklace. And this one was the cruelest, not because the Queen meant it cruelly, but because the symbolism was so precise it could only have been intentional. This diamond and pearl piece was given as a wedding gift to Queen Alexandra in 1863, and from that moment forward it became tied to one thing and one thing only, the Princess of Wales title. The exact title Camilla had been denied the moment she walked through the palace doors. The exact title that still had Diana's name burned through every syllable of it like a watermark that would never fade. When the Queen Mother died in 2002, the necklace passed to Queen Elizabeth. And she placed it in the vault without a word and did not touch it again for 16 years. It did not come out for Camilla at any state banquet. It did not come out for any of the dozens of formal receptions Camilla attended year after year in her role as senior royal. It waited. In 2018, it came out for Catherine, worn to a state banquet at Buckingham Palace. A banquet Camilla also attended. The necklace tied directly to the Princess of Wales title, worn by the actual Princess of Wales, in the same room, at the same table, with Camilla sitting close enough to see exactly what was resting against Catherine's collarbone. The Queen did not need to say a single word that night. She had already said everything she was ever going to say. But nothing, not the necklace, not the brooch, not the Nizam of Hyderabad across Catherine's shoulders, nothing cut as deep as the Edinburgh wedding bracelet. Because this piece was not about power or legacy or the image of the crown. This piece was about love. And that distinction is the whole story. Prince Philip's mother, Princess Alice, lived one of the most heartbreaking lives in the entire history of the European royal families. Declared mentally ill by doctors who did not understand her. Forcibly separated from her children. Institutionalized against her will. She eventually surrendered every material possession she owned and spent her final years inside Buckingham Palace wearing a nun's habit because she had decided the world outside had nothing left to give her. Philip grew up knowing precisely what his mother had endured. Knowing the kind of pain that gets buried inside royal families and never mentioned, never processed, simply carried forward in silence from one generation to the next. When he was about to marry the young woman who would become Queen Elizabeth II, he took his mother's tiara apart and had the diamonds reset into a bracelet. A wedding gift for his bride. He was giving her the most precious thing he possessed, a piece of his broken, beloved, complicated mother, transformed through grief and love into something she could wear against her skin every day for the rest of her life. The Queen wore that bracelet for 73 years. And when she decided who would carry it next, she gave it to Catherine. Not Camilla. Not Charles's wife of nearly 2 decades. Not the woman who had sat at every table and attended every reception and carried every senior royal obligation placed before her. The Queen looked at everyone in that family and concluded that the only person worthy of holding Philip's grief and his love and his private history on her wrist was Catherine. No explanation was offered. None was needed. The people who understood the Queen understood her completely in that moment. And here is what makes it permanent. There were no written instructions. The Queen never formalized any of it. No decree, no signed documentation, no official designation. Angela Kelly managed the vault. Certain pieces were simply understood by everyone inside those walls without ever being stated aloud. Which meant Camilla could never challenge it. You cannot go to court over a bracelet handed over in silence. You cannot dispute an allocation that was never officially recorded. The Queen had constructed a wall around Catherine's collection that had no door anywhere in its entire length. Camilla could see through it clearly. She simply could not get through it, not even by an inch, not in 17 years of trying. And then on September 8, 2022, Queen Elizabeth II died at Balmoral. And every lock in that vault changed hands simultaneously. What happened next told the whole story in a single image. Camilla, finally, after 17 years, with full unrestricted access to one of the greatest jewelry collections in human history, began wearing pieces in stacks. Trophies displayed across wrists and throats and foreheads. The Breville Emerald Kokoshnik tiara, locked away for 70 years because its murky Revolutionary-era origins made it diplomatically dangerous, appeared on Camilla's head at a major reception within months. Royal commentators and diplomatic experts immediately raised every uncomfortable question the Queen had spent 7 decades carefully suppressing. The protective silence dissolved in a single evening. At a state banquet in March 2026, Camilla arrived stacked in the late Queen's personal Cartier bracelets piled to her elbow, a towering sapphire tiara filling the space above them. Then Catherine walked in wearing one piece. Just one. The lover's knot tiara, built from brilliant cut diamonds and 19 hanging pearls, the piece Diana wore until the headaches it caused became almost unbearable, the piece she kept wearing anyway because it was hers, because it was her, because no tiara in the collection had ever carried a more complicated and beloved identity. Every camera in that room turned toward Catherine. Not because she had more diamonds, she had fewer. Not because she outranked Camilla's display, she didn't, not in raw volume. But because when the lover's knot entered a room, the room felt something. It felt Diana's memory and the Queen's deliberate, patient, 17-year endorsement and Catherine's own unshakable grace arriving together at precisely the same moment. Camilla had more jewels on her body than anyone else in that room. And she lost it completely, instantly, without a single word being exchanged. Because here is the truth the Queen built into every velvet box, every silent smile, every brooch handed to Catherine without explanation and every request from Camilla dissolved into silence. The thing Camilla could never extract from that vault, not then, not now, not with every drawer thrown open and every lock removed, was the Queen's private trust. The knowledge, communicated entirely through diamonds and pearls over 17 years of deliberate action, that when Elizabeth looked at these two women, she saw only one of them clearly. One woman she handed her marriage to. One woman she trusted with Philip's grief and her own private self and the intimate daily companion of 7 decades of her reign. One woman she dressed in the visual symbols of her own era because she believed she could carry them without being crushed by the weight. The vault is open now. Every drawer. Every velvet box. Every locked case that Camilla spent 17 years standing outside of. She has access to all of it. And she's still lost. Because the Queen decided something about these two women a very long time ago, and she said it the only way she ever said anything that truly mattered. She said it without a single word. She said it in diamonds. She said it in pearls. She said it in a bracelet built from a mother's grief and a young man's love, placed quietly around the wrist of the only woman she ever fully trusted to carry it forward. And that decision will outlast every crown, every ceremony, every piece of legislation, and every formal decree the monarchy ever produces. Because it was written in the only language Queen Elizabeth II ever truly mastered. The language of what she gave, and what she didn't. And who she gave it to, and who she never would.